Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley. This is another church in our tour of Herefordshire churches. This is the church at Canon Frome, in the Frome Valley, of course. There was a medieval church here. In fact, it gets its name, Canon Frome, from the fact that the manor was held by the Augustinian canons of Llanthony Abbey. But that medieval church was destroyed during the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, otherwise known as the English Civil War, but Wars of the Three Kingdoms is objectively the much more impressive name. So call it that, particularly, the Americans go, we had our Civil War, yes, but we had wars between three kingdoms. You try and top that, you can't. So it was badly damaged, it was pulled down, rebuilt, and all that remains of that building is the lower part of the tower, because that was in turn rebuilt in the Victorian era by the Hoptons of Canon Frome Court, which is next door, and it was rebuilt by the local architect Frederick Preedy. Frederick Preedy was an extremely talented man. We've seen some of his churches in Worcestershire. He was not only was he an expert in architecture, Gothic architecture, but also he was an expert in stained glass. And many of his churches include stained glass. Of course, he did stained glass for churches where he didn't do very much in the way of actual architectural work. But this is one of his churches, and it's very much a country house church. It's next door to the house. Now, the house is now a housing cooperative. It was sold off after the Second World War, as so many big houses were, and thankfully, instead of being demolished, it's become this rather eccentric, special place. But because this is a country house church, it's fairly small. It's there for the big house family and their tenants and servants, because basically they were the employer around here. And it has a big mortuary chapel next door, which would have been where they sat. So as we look around, we'll see these evidences of this particular type of Victorian country church. So let's have a look around. As usual, then, we begin at the west end. Now, this is how long the nave is. As I say, it's a building for the country house, really. And here we have the image, the very image of a Victorian rector, Victorian clergyman, looking suitably severe. We have here the roll of honour, including Commander Pratt Barlow, RN, who was killed, Captain R.H. Baskerville, Glamorganshire Yeomanry, Second Lieutenant Keeling of the Cheshire Regiment, Sergeant C.W. Smith of the RAF, and so on. All the names. You can see there we've got the naval ensign as well as the Union flag. And then this is the great glory of the building in many ways. This is the Hopton Chapel. It appears initially to be an aisle, but really, well, you might call it the Hopton aisle, I suppose, but really it is the mortuary chapel for the family. You can see you've got their hatchments. These will be displayed at funerals and hung up in the church. The font is Victorian, and these memorials going back to the 18th century, various members of the family, piano, and they would have had seating in here, but it's gone, and why not? It opens up the space. We've got the old communion table and rails here at the east end of the chapel, and then above the great wheel window with the Christ of the Revelation in the centre, and angels around the outside, which doesn't really come out here in this video, I'm afraid, but that's life. Memorial here to various members here. There is John Hopton, Clark, Reverend John Hopton. He joined, so it's Conan Hopton, it's a good name, Conan. He joined the army at Madras, and is buried at Moulmein, so by the old Moulmein pagoda, looking lazy to the sea. And here we have memorials to Susanna Hopton and Grace Anne, daughter of John Williams and wife of Reverend John Hopton. And there's John Hopton himself. And the later memorials, unfortunately one of them's fallen off the wall, but we've got here Sybil Maud Hopton of Canon Frome Court, died at Cannes, July the 3rd, 1940, coming to the end, of course, of the period of the country house and that era between the wars when the country house was still there, still doing its thing, but on borrowed time. Pulpit, and then we have Christ, the risen Christ, and Mary Magdalene. He's got a hoe, so that would explain supposing him to be the gardener. Again, it's basic common imagery here, and the organ here is replaces that given by Colonel John Hopton, and it's 1930s apparently, 1934. Can we see who made it? There's often a maker's plate here. It is Jardine and Co. of Manchester. There we are looking west, and you've got this very simple building. Sir Richard Cope Hopton, Canon Frome Court, died 13th January 1810. His widow. They pursued a certain road to happiness in the cultivation and practice of every social and religious duty, which is a very 1810 thing to say. East window, we've got St. Peter and St. Paul. That's the dedication here, St. Peter and St. Paul, and St. James here. And then here we have St. John the Baptist, but here is one of the canons, the Augustinian canons of Llanthony, the people who founded the church and for whom, of course, it is named. So that is Canon Frome on the inside. I say it's a country house church. The country house adjoins, of course, on the north side, which is why that's where the Hopton Chapel is located. So that is the inside here. It's a lovely sunny day, and the church is seeing at its best on a sunny day like this. Yes, there we have one of the windows, and the court, as I say, is on that side, the mansion. And so here we are outside at Canon Frome. I got the dedication wrong inside, it's St. James's. But you can see here again how short the nave is. And it is short, and it's short because not a big population here, and you've got that big chapel for the big house family and their guests. So very much a country house church, and Victorian Preedy, who's a relatively local man, does a lot of work around here, and his buildings are usually quite pleasing. It's just something it's a shame that the older, late 17th century church here was pulled down, but that's life. I mean, at least we've got a very pretty building to replace. You can just see that brick tower. And the Victorians weren't very keen on brick churches. They'd like to have them in stone, particularly in the countryside, and particularly if you've got a big house family and you want something that will impress your visitors and neighbours with your visitors when you have your house parties out here. So we'll have a look at the outside. We can't actually get around the other side because of the big house, and people live there, so private property of the housing collective who live there, which is a nice idea. So let's have a look at the outside. So here we are. As I said, you've got that nice brick tower, and you've got then you see the vestry sticking out. Then the vestry's on this side because the big house is on the other. The round behind us, we've got the lich gate, which is again something necessary if you're a big country house church, if you're a country house church and you want to impress your visitors, big house family. Look, we've got a lich gate, and they're very common things. It's just part of the English countryside, really. Lich gates. We've got this nice wooded, nice bit of graveyard. And the reason we're going around here is, of course, that you can see the house, and the house is, as you can see, directly behind the church, which then attaches on that side So all the graveyards on the south side, and it's not at all uncommon to find it in places like this where the church sits next to the house. I mean, there are some houses, these old country houses, where the church actually is attached to the house, where there is a corridor of some kind, sometimes a covered way, sometimes a literal corridor. That's of course be part of the gardens. And there's you can see that lovely old brick, and then it attaches to this Victorian stone structure. Memorials that are a lot older than the church, and so you can't really get round the east end because, again, other than the graveyard, it's all, we've got the church basically surrounded on three sides by the grounds of the big house and by bits of the big house, because it's a country house church. Church is here because the house, it's not uncommon, of course, to find medieval manor houses next to the church and the manor house. And here, of course, who held the manor? Monks. Well, strictly canons, and canons basically are the canons regular, the canons who live under a monastic rule. So, of course, the church and the manor house are next to each other, and after the Reformation, the manor house is rebuilt, church is rebuilt, the two remain next to each other as we see them. And so there we have it, the Church of St James, Canon Frome, Herefordshire. I'm sure you'll agree that this is a very pretty little building, and it's well worth a visit. To get here, you've got to come up the drive of the big house. It is signed, but you do have to make sure that you notice where the sign is. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. May God bless you and keep you until next time.